So welcome everybody. Thank you very much for transforming team accountability, alignment, and results in 90 days, the webinar. I made this presentation some time ago and I realized that the title of it is a little bit of an audacious claim. So how do you really transform a team, their accountability and their alignment and results in just 90 days? It sounds like one of those things you'd expect on a late night infomercial on what you could do to your face. But I realize it's a bit of an audacious claim, and I'd like to show you in this time that we're here that, there is a method that I think you'll see, as I have seen, is really quite transformational on how a team aligns. So first I'm going to introduce the content that I work with here and myself. So I'm the Managing Director for DOOR Training and Consulting in Canada. DOOR is the exclusive authorized representative in Canada for partners in leadership. So all the content we represent in the area of accountability and culture change is developed by partners in leadership. They've been in this business for about 27 years. You'll see on this screen here that they've won numerous awards actually for what they have developed. You'll see there's a 2015 Learning and Practice Awards. They won gold in excellence in social learning. In 2014, they won a gold for excellence in content. And what you don't see on there is 2016 CLO also awarded them, again, a silver for excellence in content. They've also won an award for the International E-Learning Association for the best blended learning solution that they evaluated on the planet. So very award-winning, very well-recognized content. The client list includes a number of very prominent, successful, reputable, well-known brands that you might be really confident and be aware of. Every time I look at the sheet now, I think very different of Hormel. I was at a conference in November where there was somebody from a pizza franchise, actually, who was talking about how he had gone fishing with the CEO of Hormel, and the person from Hormel said, it took us 100 years to become a billion-dollar company. But in the next 9 years, we became a $9 billion company. And the person, incredulously asked, well, how did you do that? And he said, well, you have to talk to these people at Partners in Leadership. They really transformed their culture and really changed what they were doing. So there's a tremendous transformation potential in our methodology, and I hope to show you some of that now. So this content is based upon Partners in Leadership has developed 3 different tracks to accountability. The content we'll be talking about here today is based really largely on the self track, the Oz principle. So back in 1994, if you would have gone to Barnes & Noble, because you couldn't have searched online at Amazon.com yet, for accountability, the Oz Principle would have been the only book you would have found. It's really the seminal, perennial, best-selling book on organizational accountability. So it's been a bestseller in the top 5 in the leadership and management category every single year since it came out in 94. And so the models introduced then are a big part of the work that we've been doing, although this work has really been done, like I say, for about 27 years. And so the book is not just when it came out, was kind of a release of many of the things that they'd already been working on. There's a culture track based upon our culture transformation book. That book is referenced, shows some of that content and methodology and change the culture, change the game. And then we have a track for helping others create accountability for people when they are trying to deliver on a key expectation. So how do you hold other people accountable, including some people that maybe report to you, but there's also other stakeholders, maybe some peers, maybe some leaders. How do you hold everybody effectively accountable in order to deliver on the thing that you really need to deliver? So that's based upon the others track. So just some numbers, thousands of clients in 106 countries. So this has been done in very different cultures, languages, all around the world, literally millions of people trained. So here's the premise for what we're going to work on today. And this is, these are kind of outlining the steps of what's involved, and I'll go through each of these throughout the webinar. So the first step is create clarity of key results. So starting from the leadership and then all the way down, we'll show you how important it is to get really clear on what the key results, what it is we're really trying to achieve. Secondly, then to cascade the clarity of those key results down to the team. Thirdly, to make sure that we align the team to key results. Now, you'll notice that I haven't said anything yet that really sounds like rocket science at all. But you'll see as we kind of go through that these are really necessary setup for what we do with the rest. So this number 4, the steps to accountability and moving everyone above the line. We'll see how we use that model as a really effective way to make sure we keep people above the line. And then number 5, identify the highest leverage accountability gaps, and then we close them with SOSD. So I'm going to start getting into this and kind of start by saying, a good premise for us when we talk about accountability is begin by clearly defining the results. So our experience is we go into many organizations, talk to people about what are the results, what are you really out to achieve? And in the sports metaphor, the comparison would be, how do you know that you are winning? And that's really the way we like to phrase, how do you know what you're winning? So we ask a lot of people, what is your organization out to achieve? And we get varying things that, might be something on the website about improving shareholder value or serving the client or providing value to stakeholders and all kinds of little fluffy things that when you really ask people to articulate, how do you really know? Like, how are you keeping score and how do you know when you've won? And that becomes a really key thing. So we have places where we talk to people where they have many, many KPIs. So they have a list of KPIs. They maybe have a balanced scorecard. And there are 10, 12, 16, 18, 20 or more KPIs or scorecards that they're all trying to be sure of. And then I ask simply the question. So if you achieve 12 of 16 KPIs, how have you done? Most people would kind of respond back to think that they think they've done fairly well. They achieved 3 out of 4. But then the question is, where have you really created accountability for any of them? Because if 12 out of 16 is okay, well, what about 11? That's only a slight margin off. And by that matter, who gets to decide which 11 you hit and which 5 you miss? So how can you really have accountability for something when we're not really, really clear on what results need to be achieved? So we kind of go through helping people identify what's really clearly most important. So we talk about really clearly defining the key results. And so we kind of introduce this as, there might be categories, there might be metrics. Clearly, there has to be a way to measure it. We cannot create a key result that's not measurable. So it has to be some margin. And even if you look at a list of KPIs or scorecards, there are certain ones of those that are ultimately really, really key, right? So we can't even dream about providing higher customer service levels until we achieve revenue or buy-in that makes this even potentially sustainable. So there's certain ones that really can be prioritized, or for that matter, what is the most compelling change in the result we really need to hit? So I did this workshop in an organization, for example, it was an aerospace company that had been bought a year prior by Warren Buffett. So they've been bought by Warren Buffett, and over many, many years as an aerospace company, you would think, pardon me, they're in the manufacturing business. So production is important, and obviously selling your stuff is important. So revenue is important, and reducing errors and reducing waste and efficiency, all of these things are all very, very important results. And they have been things that they have been measuring and working towards for many, many years. Now all of a sudden Warren Buffett buys this aerospace company. What is the one thing you think Warren Buffett wants more than anything else? So clearly he expects you to remain profitable, but what Warren Buffett wants is he wants you to generate cash. How you handle cash in your business is critical to Warren Buffett. It's what's made him rich. So you can take an organization that's been doing, $1.6 billion worth of business at 18% margin for the last 15 years, which kind of was about the case with this aerospace company. But Warren Buffett wants to get in. He wants to have you look at how you turn your inventory, how you manage your inventory, how you manage your receivables, how you manage your payables. And all of a sudden you can take a profitable $1.6 billion business and you can squeeze a good $750 million worth of cash out of it, which Warren Buffett takes that cash and then goes either reinvests back into the business to help them do more than they did before or to go into some other business. So that was one new key result that suddenly took the forefront above all others. So it really helps us prioritize what's the result we really need to drive. So we asked people, Partners in Leadership had done this workplace accountability study over a 3-year period, and it's the biggest of its kind. There were 40,000 respondents. And so in this poll, we asked people, are key results clearly defined and understood throughout your organization. So what do you think, if I were to ask you to maybe take a look at that and see, what do you think the numbers would be? What do you think people would say? Feel free to write there's a little chat box or question box. You can feel free to put a number there. Tell me what you think. So I always have fun with this in the room, and then maybe make a little bit of a joke of the people who estimate one way. I say, oh, they're really naive, and then the other people are really cynical. But when we ask people, are key results clearly defined and understood throughout the organization? This is literally the result is that 85% said no. Which, when you really stop and think about it, this is ridiculously huge. Just think about this for a second. On any given day, 85% of the people in the organization, according to this study, or 85% of the organizations or teams, people are working around playing in a team, they're playing a game, but they don't know at the end of the day, how do I know if I'm winning or not? How do I know if I'm really winning or not? And that's almost a tragedy, really, when you think about it. So that in itself, there's a huge, tremendous performance nudge that we can create just by working on this to start. So this is huge. So then we ask people, a supplementary question: do priorities change frequently, creating confusion around the key results you need to achieve? So this is really looking at, do we sort of stay true to what we're trying to do, and are people really clear on this? Do they always know what we're trying to do? So sadly, I'm sure you know this from your own experience, 87% said yes, priorities change a lot, creates confusion. Why? Because inevitably some fire starts somewhere and we need to put that fire out, and that's more important than anything else we're doing around here. And there's some other crisis that has happened, and so we're in crisis management mode, and that becomes more important than anything else we're trying to do around here. And then time goes by, we sort of lose track of what's really important, and then you find out we're having similar conversations at later parts of the year around what it is we really try to achieve. And so that really is kind of the essence around accountability, is to say, what is it you are setting out to achieve? Let's really articulate it, define it, carve it in sand, and then let's be accountable to do it. So unlike metrics and things which are all measurements that we see, how generally are we doing? What are really the key results that we need to do? So obviously you've got, a dashboard in your car, right? So you've got a speedometer and you've got different things showing you how your car is doing, and they are all mighty helpful. But ultimately, I think the one key result that is a result above any is that when you hop in your car, you turn the ignition, you start stepping on the accelerator pedal, that you get to wherever you're getting to safely. That one key result is probably more important than all of the others. And so looking at the dashboards and how we're measuring other stuff, they're all nice and well, and yes, we want to maintain within the speed limit, but guess what? I've gotten some speeding tickets in my life and I haven't killed myself yet. So that's a great result. So I'm kind of being a little facetious here, but you get what I'm kind of getting at. So in this, when we talk about activity versus results, we say activity are the actions people take that lead to results. That's kind of a self-explanatory no-brainer. But then I ask people, does all activity create results? And when I ask the question, I don't know what's going through your mind right now, but I always stand there for a lengthy pause, because people's initial reaction is no, not all activity creates results. But then as I keep pausing and remaining silent, they recognize that, yes, well, activity does create results, just often not the results that we're really looking to achieve. And so results are inevitable. They are the desired and undesired outcomes of taking actions. So no matter what you are doing, you are going to create results. So, and then we look at this doing the job versus achieving the result. And this is another really interesting thing, because we go into many organizations, we talk about what is your job? If I ask 1,000 people, what do you do? Walking around a social event or whatever, probably 950 of them would respond back with their title or what they do, basically a short description of their role. So people identify with their title, with their role, about their job. This is my job. However, we get sometimes so focused and The HR community within the organization is, once we get to a certain size and we think we have to have mature processes and how we treat people. And so, I don't think I've ever gone into a room, asked somebody if they do or don't have a job description. Of course, everybody in any organization of some size has a job description. So they have a job description, but as far as achieving the results, they don't really know or are not really clear on what results we're all collectively trying to achieve. And so their focus becomes on doing the job. As long as I'm doing my job, then I'm doing okay. This is what I'm measured on, the job performance, our annual reviews, and all the methods that we have to see how well we are doing are all connected to the individual's tasks and to the job, as opposed to achieving the result. And what we want to create is a mindset shift from the leader on down that doing the job is achieving the result. There's really nothing more important than that. And so we do need to create the shift away from just what our job is, because the reason why we get hired, the reason why an organization grew is so that we're adding people and competencies and capabilities and manpower and mental power in order to achieve results. I mean, ultimately, the organization is trying to deliver something. And so people are a means to that end. But we end up falling into a space where we all too often focus on, again, the job rather than the results. So there's, again, a huge, tremendous performance jump, just changing that mindset and then doing some changes to help people think in a different way than what they were before. So here are some of the limitations of just doing the job. So again, we go through, we identify to say, if we have an organization, we have these people in these different roles. Bear in mind, these people have job descriptions because they're in a mature organization, so they know what is their job. And by definition, everybody knows that, hey, if it's not on your job description, it is somebody else's job. So we have these people doing things. Inevitably, as we go forward and try to achieve results, there are things that come up that just haven't been anticipated for. So something comes up and, oh, this is new. How do we deal with that? And so we have people who have different jobs and job descriptions, but that's not really my job. So things do kind of fall through the cracks. So inevitably, many organizations, in order to prevent things from falling through the cracks, will go and hire more people. So we hire more people, we give them other roles to fill in gaps to make sure that, so we've got somebody here to catch these balls that they drop, and we've got somebody here to catch these inquiries as they come in, and we've got somebody here to deal with these issues as they arise. And so we grow the organization, but again, we keep people focused on what is their job and their job description. So we often hire more people because still things fall through the cracks. And as we keep getting busier and we take on more things and we're working harder to achieve certain results, all these things come in, the organization grows, we're moving more things, we're dealing with many more things. And so the organization has grown, but we've really taken our sights very much off of, again, what is it we are really trying to achieve? And so, again, another key performance bump that we introduce is creating the power of joint accountability, taking all of these individuals that might be in a team or a business unit or in some area, and they might have been just in one little silo and not working with another silo, but together we work towards, we can have joint accountability for something bigger. So once we create and introduce that joint accountability, we get results that we were not previously achieving. So we again, this is a huge performance bump because now we are extracting some capability, some results, some momentum, some adjustment that we were not getting otherwise. So then I'm going to introduce you to an interesting little exercise. Now, I put this up on your screen. Usually at this stage, if we were doing a workshop, we have multiple ways of demonstrating this with a lot of fun. It's a very interactive exercise. But if we were in a smaller setting, then I might put this one up. And now I realize that this being a webinar, you can kind of see what I'm presenting, but I can't see you. I don't know what materials you have. You can't show me what you're doing while we are talking. But if I were, I tell people in a group to say, let's start with a little exercise. So here are the objects of this game. Okay, the game is to score points. Everybody wants to win, so I'm going to tell you how to score points. We start with two vertical lines and 2 horizontal lines on a page. So everybody in the room has a piece of paper. I tell them to start with 2 horizontal and 2 vertical lines. I don't even necessarily put this up on the screen. I just give them the instructions. And then I say, we're going to play a game, and you need to use symbols. You need to use some kind of symbols on your page. And when you get 2 symbols in a line in any row or diagonally, 2 symbols in a row of the same symbol, you get 1 point. And if you get 3 symbols together in a row, horizontally, vertically, or diagonally, you get 2 points. So that's how you get points. So that's the extent of the instructions I give people, and then I tell them go. And so it's interesting to see how people will look at this. I don't know what your thoughts is when I told you to lay out 2 horizontal and vertical lines like this. This is a game involving symbols, and you have to put them in a row, and you get 2 points for getting 2 in a row, but 3 points for getting 3 in a row. A lot of people, their mind typically shifts to tic-tac-toe. It's kind of the first thing that many people think about. So they start playing tic-tac-toe, and a number of interesting things happen throughout the room. So I give them a time period. I say stop, and I ask to look at people's sheets to see how well they have done and how many points. So sometimes I will find 2 people have gotten together and played maybe 1 or 2 games of X's and O's of tic-tac-toe, right? So they each drew 1 on each page. They worked together, filled out 2 games, and then they count up their points. So they have a certain number of points. But then I get to some other people that kind of said, well, maybe this isn't tic-tac-toe, this could be something else. And so they just started drawing X's and O's or any other given symbol all across this page without really playing just tic-tac-toe. And they just started drawing them in all the boxes. And so they count up, you can make one steady line across the page all the way down and have really an infinite number of combinations of 2 in a row and 3 in a row, right? So you get a whole bunch of points. And inevitably, there's some people that didn't use these lines at all. They just, as fast as they could, started writing symbols all the way up and down the page, each one of them, to see how many they could come. And clearly, they end up being the winners. But we do this to kind of demonstrate a point. This is one of many exercises we use to show a little model that we teach in our accountability work. So this model is central to really everything we do. We introduce it in all 3 of our tracks. We call this the results pyramid. So we say at the top are the results that you are getting. Now remember, we said before that all activity leads to results. So this result is not necessarily the achievement of what you really wanted the result to be. It's just the results. You are inevitably getting results. Every individual is getting results. Every team is getting results. Every organization is getting results. Good, bad, or indifferent, or phenomenal. There's a set of results that can be determined at one state in time, and that's the results you're getting. But we say that the results that you get come from the actions that people take. So in the prior example, I show people how you played that game determined the result that you got, right? So whether you worked with just that one set of vertical and horizontal lines, or whether you did multiple horizontal and vertical lines, that's basically how we showed up and how we played and what we did. So these were actually our activities, right? And those actions determine our results. So smart actions, vigorous actions, lazy actions will drive a result. But we say at the level below that is your beliefs drive your actions. And this is really where the key point is, because if you look at the exercise we did within a given room, there are some people that just believe this is tic-tac-toe. This is what I'm doing. And so on that belief that I believe this is the game, and I believe these are the rules of the game, and I believe this is how the game is played, I will work within those confines, I will act in a certain manner, and I will get a fairly predictable result. However, some people changed their beliefs somewhat and said, well, there's no restriction that we only have to play one game of tic-tac-toe. We could play multiple games of tic-tac-toe. And so that belief drove a different set of actions and created a different result. And then there's other people that said, well, he didn't say it was tic-tac-toe at all, so we don't even have to stick to these lines. And so they formulated a different belief that all kinds of things are possible. There really aren't as many rules to this as we would otherwise apply. And so they engage in the game in a very different way. So that belief set drives a totally different action and creates a certain different set of results. And then we say also that experiences are what create your beliefs. You own your beliefs. I cannot tell you what to believe. I cannot force you to believe something. I can communicate a belief that I would like you to have, but whether you choose to embrace that or hold that belief is completely up to you, and that largely would be driven from your own experiences. So, an example I might do in a room would be, if I had a group of people in a room, I might say, let's imagine that today is we're a brand new team and you've just been brought together for the very first time, and I am your new CEO. And this is our first meeting, and I tell you, boy, I'm really excited about the direction of this company. We're so happy to have you on board. You were handpicked as A players to join this company because you've got the greatest potential, and I think together we're going to really change the world and go places. But, I have to say, I really want to hear all your ideas, okay? So please, whatever ideas you've had going up to this point, there's no such thing as a dumb idea. I'm sure you've all heard that cliche before, right? And so I ask people, please just tell me, what are your ideas? What are your thoughts? I really want to hear whatever your ideas are. And then I ask the group, so tell me, will you share your ideas with me openly or not? And there might be some that will say yes. And I ask, okay, why? Well, because I believe you. So some people, they might naively believe, and they might be so well-intentioned that they assume the best and they have experience, and that, it's okay to believe that you really mean what you say. That's great. Then there's other people that, well, no, because they've had an experience where they've been in a room before where people were invited to speak up. I remember Jane spoke up about something else, and then curiously enough, 2 weeks later, we never saw Jane anymore again, right? So we have these experiences that shape our beliefs, and I can tell you what I want you to believe, but you will own that belief and you will hold that belief. So here is the challenge that we have in organizations. There are beliefs that exist, and they come quite by accident, quite, as a natural progression, I guess, of the culture. But there are beliefs in our culture today that some serve us and some do not. So, for example, have you ever been in an organization where people believe, going the extra mile doesn't get you anywhere around here? Have you ever heard somebody, well, that's a belief. And on this model, that belief is going to drive a certain action, a very different action from somebody who believed that extra effort and would in fact be recognized. That's going to drive a very different action. You maybe have people, maybe you've heard this one. This is a really common one. It's not what you know, it's who you know. Right? So that is a belief that some people hold in an organization that, I'm going to be limited because I don't know people. And that belief is going to drive certain actions. It's going to change with what vigor and with what enthusiasm and with what ingenuity and innovation we apply towards solving problems. If you believe they're not open to change around here, or, I could go on and on. There's a million examples of them, right? These are beliefs that very much limit things. And what too often happens is when we get into things like trying to create different change, we say, if you're not happy with the results you're getting here, we put this line in the pyramid to show that we call this the leadership trap. Because all too often, if a leader's not getting the results they want, then they will work at the actions level. So I will not getting the right results, so I'm going to create a new process, or we're going to introduce a new policy, or we're going to shuffle some people around, do a little bit of a reorganization, but we're going to work at this actions level. And until they have done something to work at the beliefs level, they're still not going to change the fundamental driving force that's going to drive these people's actions. And so in many organizations, we see quite often that as we try to improve results, there could be things like, we're going to introduce some lean processes or some Six Sigma, or we're going to adopt some best practices or some this or some that. So these all fall into the actions level. So let me give you a little example. I was involved in and aware of and following a certain story that happened in the city of Edmonton some time ago. And there was this huge debacle about a metro line project that became dramatically delayed by over a year. And it's just terrible front page news for quite a period of time. And there was a lot of people put on the hot seat. And so at the end of the day, ultimately, the city manager got fired over the debacle. And basically at the end of the day, they had an auditor go in and look at what was happening. And what the auditor said was, the people weren't even following their own project management best practices. So if we follow those in future, like we need to follow those in future, that was one of his recommendations. But ultimately, there were all these other things that were happening down here demonstrating a lack of accountability. So we had, the city people blaming the contractor who was blaming another contractor, and the procurement people were responsible, not the engineering people. And everybody's pointing fingers and laying blame and doing all kinds of things. And then the actions be, we need to really reinforce everybody using these project management best practices. But it does not change the underlying belief that we have down here that, hey, if I'm not getting my results, I can blame so-and-so. And as long as I can blame so-and-so, then I'm not responsible. And that belief is going to drive a certain action that is totally different. So that model becomes ridiculously powerful. We use it in our culture transition work as the fundamental model that we just really, really work. Because it's simple, people can understand it, they can speak to it, they can measure themselves against it, we can diagnose everything that we're doing by it, we can prescribe how to do something differently and much more effectively by this model, so it becomes a ridiculously powerful model. We've transformed, we've done huge, incredibly valuable culture transformation work with largely just this model. So that's kind of what we get to. And then, now I just need to figure out how to get my my highlighter off. Sorry, now I'm having trouble changing the slide here, so forgive me. Normal, non-drawing mode, here we go. Hopefully that'll work. Okay, so that's the results pyramid, and this red circle here is basically showing that's where we say culture resides. So again, I can use this model, I can diagnose anything that's happening in your culture with this model, but similarly, I can also prescribe anything that needs to happen in your culture with that model. So now we talk about alignment, and so largely we have people over here aligned based on that model in very different ways, working for different reasons, working on different set of beliefs, and they're not all aligned towards the same thing. So what we really want to do is create some alignment. This is our steps to accountability model. Sorry. So this is in the OZ principle, this is the model we use really to talk about accountability. What is and what is not accountability? So you'll see in the middle here, there is a line, and then we have what's below the line, we have what's above the line. So below the line, we have articulated as the blame game, and above the line, we've identified these are the steps to accountability. So when I am below the line, I am only getting the results that the environment permits me to get. When I am above the line, I am shaping and crafting the results that I'm getting despite my environment. When I am below the line, what I'm able to do, I feel I am not in control of my environment. My environment is in control of me, and that will determine what I'm able to do. Whereas when we step above the line, we're acting in control of our environment. We take control of our environment. Below the line, we are feeling kind of helpless, like I'm a victim. Things are happening to me. Above the line, we are feeling more in control. We are feeling more empowered, emboldened, that we are in charge of our destiny. Below the line, we're feeling like we are being acted upon. And above the line, we're feeling like we are actually acting upon other things. So you'll see below the line, we have some examples of things that are below the line. So we articulate and help people really create awareness around this. And then we elaborate on what these steps to accountability are. So these are the 6 different things that we would use in the blame game. So cover your tail, wait and see, confusion, tell me what to do, it's not my job, ignore, deny, finger pointing. So in an actual workshop or in a session, we would do this blame storming game that is really super fun and incredibly effective. Because at the end of the day, what we want to articulate for people is to recognize a couple of things. One is the blame game happens. Being below the line happens a lot. It is almost the default state that environmental forces are always pulling us down below the line. Unless we are taking intentional, specific, purposeful action to go above the line, we almost inevitably end up being below the line. So in a fun way, we help people appreciate and experience in their own environment just how much time they're actually spending below the line, just how easy that is. It's not a character flaw. We don't want to say that people are morally deficient if they go below the line. We say it's really quite natural, quite normal to go below the line. So we don't really want to call people out for being villains for going below the line. It's really quite natural. But we also clearly point out that when we are below the line, we are not effective. We are not at all working on a trajectory that's going to get us the result we need to get. So if we stay below the line, that's ineffective. We need to change. And so this whole exercise is a premise to make people really painfully, keenly, powerfully aware of below the line activity in themselves and in others. And so we give this, a powerful language of below the line that people then start to adopt and use within their workplaces. And it's really amazing to see in a short introduction to this, people start using this language in a bit of a fun way, but it becomes fun and safe to say, oh, that's below the line. Well, that's great, because now that you've identified it, you've created this mental trigger to say, we can't stay there, we have to go above the line. What does that look like? Right? So we take something that is very common, and when we do this exercise, we really help them realize just how common it is in their own environment, not somewhere else, not in some hypothetical dysfunctional organization, but within their own team, within their own organization. And then we talk about the steps to accountability. So we've only got so much time on a webinar here, but I'm going to, just since this is introduced in the Oz principle, the essence of the Oz principle, when you remember the story, The Wizard of Oz, remember they were going down the yellow brick road and they were looking to find a wizard, right? And they were looking for this wizard because this wizard was going to solve all their problems and give them all what they want. And so the short answer to the Oz principle is there is no wizard. Okay, so there is no wizard. All too often we've got things happening within an organization and we think, well, if the right leader comes along, if the right idea comes along, if the right method comes along, the right process or policy comes along, it's all going to click. Well, no, there is no wizard. So we have to take the bull by the horns and show accountability. And so these see it, own it, solve it, do it steps relate to the characters in that movie. So if you remember the movie, there was the lion who had to have courage. So we have to have courage to see it. What's the reality of the situation? What's really going on here? How well am I actually doing? I'd like to think I'm doing really well, but where am I really weak? And what have I been maybe missing? Or what am I not seeing or failing to see? Or what do I need to understand more deeply? So see it is really having the courage of the lion to be able to see things as they really are, and also then to hear the hard things. Own it is really about the heart, having the heart of the Tin Man. The Tin Man wanted a heart. So how do we show ownership? Like, how do I take ownership that this is mine? That where is ownership lacking? Is my own level of ownership lacking? And do I need to step that up somewhat? Am I not bought in to the level that I really need to be? And how do we look at our team and measure and see what is everybody's level of ownership and engagement in this? And how do we increase that level of ownership? And how am I contributing to the problem or solution, right? So what is my role? Am I a bystander or am I a participant? Am I a renter or am I an owner? So this is really changing to say, no, if you own it, you're not a bystander, you've got to be a participant. And you can't be a renter, you've got to be an owner. Solve it is really around what else can I do? So what else can we think of and do? And the short answer to that question is there's always something, right? So all too often we come to some in the actual workshop, we show some other data, right, that shows that when people come up with challenges, if I were to ask you how often do things go perfectly according to plan, you would say, well, almost never, right? Everybody sort of seems to intuitively know that almost never. But what else can we do? There's always something else that we can do. Obstacles arise. All too often people become stuck. So finding and inspiring and motivating people to find new ways to solve problems is dramatically important. It's a huge performance nudge. Do it is basically committing to what we say we're going to do. It's being able to execute and being able to take a plan and then actually move it through to actually close something. So quickly, we talk about best practices. So the best practices of See It are obtaining the perspectives of others, being open and candid in your communication. That's a good one. There's a lot of people that work just on this, creating more candid communication, like in conversations training, asking for and offering feedback, We introduce a feedback model that's ridiculously simple, and we really highlight and emphasize that, man, if you really want to change performance, probably the single greatest bump in performance that we can introduce anywhere is just working on feedback and getting you to consistently, regularly, routinely, habitually be asking for and offering feedback. That's huge. And then hearing what you need to see to get the reality of the situation. Own it, being personally invested, learning from successes and failures, making sure that your work is aligned with key results, so you're not just focused on a job, and also acting on the feedback that you receive. Solve it, constantly asking what else can I do, as I mentioned, collaborating across functional boundaries. There's huge opportunity here. I don't know how many organizations we speak to where somehow working across some kind of functional boundary is some kind of forbidden thing. Right on the results pyramid, this would be a belief that it's just one of those rules that we can't bend, and yet when we take that away, we find that, wait a second, there are reasons and ways and means which we can in fact collaborate. Creatively dealing with obstacles, rather than just saying, ooh, I've got a problem. Well, how do you find a solution and present solutions? Taking necessary risks. Do it is doing the things you say you'll do, obviously, and some people translate this with accountability, just that one thing. And in our case, we say, well, this is a best practice, clearly, doing the things you'll say you'll do, but that's not accountability altogether. Staying above the line by not blaming others is really important, so it's taking full ownership and demonstrating accountability in everything you do. Tracking progress with proactive and transparent reporting. Again, there's a lot of people in places where I see where they believe transparency is accountability. Well, no, it's a best practice of accountability, but it is not accountability all by itself. It's just one of those things that we definitely have to do if we want to create accountability and to build an environment of trust. So the dictionary definition of accountability is subject to having to report, explain, or justify, responsible, answerable, which I think a lot of people are accustomed to, right? Subject to having to justify, you see, or explain. So these are verbs that very often, accountability is something that, a leader does to a report. And that only gets so far. So we really need to create a paradigm shift here, and we get people to think instead in terms of a different way. So the typical accountability question is, who is accountable for failing to achieve the results? So this is usually when something has gone wrong, who do we blame, right? So the typical accountability question is immediately going below the line. Who are we going to blame for this? Where the Oz principle question is, who is accountable for achieving the result? So that's getting everybody aligned to achieve the result that we really want to achieve. And, I've written some articles on things where just that different viewpoint can be dramatically more effective when we need to solve problems. All too often, somebody dies in the care of the government and people are looking for who to blame and who's going to fall on the sword for that, when what we need is accountability from everybody to make sure we achieve the results of keeping people safe, right? Murdered and missing Indigenous women. Again, all too often people are looking for accountability in the form of who to blame for that. But what we need is accountability from everybody who's involved in a stakeholder to make sure that we eradicate this problem and that we change it. So accountability is a personal choice. That's really important because I can't give you accountability. I can't hold it over you. You have to take it. This is a mantle that you take on yourself. So rise above one's circumstances and demonstrate the ownership necessary for achieving key results. To see it, own it, solve it, do it. So what's really important there will inevitably be circumstances. So what are you going to do when those circumstances arrive? You're already making the choice that they're going to happen, and I'm going to overcome them. They're not going to let me just go below the line and absolve myself of accountability. I'm going to take accountability for whatever comes up. So we create this mind shift when we talk about accountability gaps. This is a difference between what is occurring versus what we want to occur, which is jeopardizing our ability to achieve a key result. So this is really important. So when you start looking in terms of, assuming now, let's say we've created some clarity around what our key result is, what we're really out to achieve. Now you can walk through your team, you can look at how you're working and engaging and how things are getting done, and you can start to see things through this lens of an accountability gap and see, okay, so this is what is happening now, but what we really need to have happen is something different. So how do we close that gap? That's a gap that if left unclosed is going to impact our ability to achieve the result. So that is it's a handicap, you could say. Unless we address that handicap, we're going to be impacted. And I can go through teams and have them identify many gaps, right? So they can go through and find there are many examples of things that are happening, but there's something else that we really need to or want to occur in order to achieve what we're really setting out to achieve. And we help people use that frame of mind and frame of reference to look at gaps. There's obviously individual gaps, right? The progress that I need to make versus what I'm making. There's team gaps, right? What we need people doing versus what people are actually doing. And there's organizational gaps. So there's the result we all need to achieve versus the results we are achieving. So there's different level of gaps. But when you look at these things in terms of gaps, it gives you something different. And then we introduce this SOSD Accountability Tool. So this is really taking what we teach in See It, Own It, Solve It, Do It, which are the steps to accountability. In the workshop, we have forums and tools that actually go through this, and we work through the process. So in the actual workshop, we would identify certain gaps that the room has identified. So here are gaps of what is happening versus what needs to have happened. So how do we close these? And we can list many, many gaps, but we start working on these and we say, under See It, what's the reality I or we most need to acknowledge? So what's really happening? What's the reality of the situation? What's going on? What do people need? What's missing? What are they not clear on? What have I not told people clearly? What haven't I taught them how to do? What haven't I been really clear on? What do I think I'm doing well, but I'm not actually doing well, right? I think I'm communicating clearly, but I'm not. Or I think I'm doing this well, but I'm not. And there are other workarounds. So to really take a look at what's the reality we need to acknowledge, what's really happening. Own it. So this is, again, looking at that level of ownership. Are we being bystanders or are we being participants, right? If I'm a renter versus an owner. If I'm a renter, I'm contributing to the problem of, what's happening to the residents. Funny, we drove through an area recently, and having been a landlord myself, I could see, I can tell which ones are rentals and which ones are not. Sometimes it becomes really obvious, right? And so how well people are demonstrating ownership to solve problems becomes evident. So we ask, what's the level of ownership? Are people involved? Are they owners versus renters? Are they taking ownership of the problem? And first and foremost, we have to look at ourselves. Am I really bought into this? Am I showing the ownership that I need to on this, or am I not? And we have to be brutally honest with that, right? And recognize that when things are really key, there's a lot of things we may not agree on. We can come to work and we can talk about U.S. politics, and we don't have to agree on what we talk about, and that's not really necessary or important because we're not in the politics business, right? We're doing something else. But when it comes to key results and certain things that need to happen in order to achieve those key results, we absolutely need to be agreed, and we need to all be showing up as owners. Asking what else can we do? So what have we done about this before? What has worked and what hasn't worked? Who else can we involve in this? Who else's opinion can we invite and draw? Who else might have some insight on this? In a workshop, we use the example of Houston, we have a problem when the Apollo space mission had an issue, and they had to solve the problem in real time. That was not just a rocket science problem, right? It involved duct tape and all kinds of different things. So you have to engage all kinds of different viewpoints and people and expertise, and different. You can't just be thinking, in silos in order to solve problems that go beyond a silo, right? Especially if we all help and aid one another. So what else can we do? We have some powerful, powerful stories of just how phenomenally impactful that one step is. That's like $1 million question just in and of itself. And then what am I or we accountable to do by when? So if we have identified a gap, and now we've taken this gap and we've decided we want to close this gap. We're now taking accountability for closing this gap. We're going through See It, Own It, Solve It. We've been through these steps already. And so now this has come up with a plan of who is going to do what by when. So there are people we need to get feedback from. There's people we need to engage in this. There's people we need to have other conversations with. And these all need to happen, obviously, because if we don't execute on that part, then the gap will just stay where it is. We've talked about it, had a nice day, but no action, right? All talk and no action, as you sometimes hear. So this becomes the method. And again, in a workshop, we go through this to create an actual total plan of what it is we're going to do. So as we go through this, we kind of summarize in the Oz principle that, only when you assume full accountability for your thoughts, feelings, actions, and results can you direct your own destiny. Otherwise, someone or something else will. And so that really becomes kind of the key premise of the Oz principle, is that circumstances there will always be things influencing us. The environment will always influence us. By default state, the environment is going to influence you to push you down below the line. That's the natural state of the union. That's the natural place where we all kind of end up and operate, and it's the safest place. And there's a lot of happy company below the line. So going above the line, it takes some action. It takes being involved. Takes demonstrating some ownership. But once we teach the steps to accountability and what that really looks like, we give people something that they can really follow to show this is what being accountable really looks like. And it's a methodology. It's a way of thinking. It's an approach. It's a process that just systematically helps you overcome obstacles and gaps that have been in your way. So now when I go back to this list that we had, we talk about clarity of key results. So getting the leaders clear and aligned, obviously it's important at the key team. You can't have a CEO that thinks the key result is this, but the CFO thinks, no, we can't do that. Otherwise it's going to impact this and that'll affect the numbers. And so we have to make sure we have alignment at the top first. And then we cascade clarity of those key results to the team. So making sure that we communicate it, introduce it in a way that everybody becomes, familiar with what they are. I published an article on LinkedIn about Marco's Pizza. He talked about the culture work that they had done, and it was really interesting. He told this phenomenal story about, how they got really key in their culture on key results. And he gave an example of an 18 or 20-year-old girl working her very first job at a Marco's Pizza franchise, been on the job for all of 2 weeks, so she's been in the working world for all of 2 weeks. And he walked in and he asked her, she was able to articulate what their 4 key results were and was able to say how exactly she aligns to and contributes to the achievement of all 4 of those key results by being basically the first person at the order desk that you talk to at the pizza store. So imagine that. And he says, if you can create that kind of alignment and clarity, he says you can't be beat in the marketplace. And so that's become really powerful. So clarity of key results becomes key. Alignment. So now we're teaching people how what they do contributes to that and how to do what they do maybe a little differently to have a greater contribution towards what we determined are the key results. Then we look at the accountability gaps, so what's happening now versus what we need to have happen, and we list them, and we identify the highest leverage, and we literally want to systematically close them. Obviously, we want to start with the highest leverage ones first, but we are systematically closing the gaps that we see, the things that we need to do differently in order to ensure that we achieve the key results we're setting out to achieve. So again, that's created a whole different mindset and a shift of focus with everybody on the team to really be focused on the results, get everybody aligned to the results, not working about their jobs, but thinking about the results. And then finally, steps to accountability, using this accountability model, moving everyone above the line. So we keep everybody working above the line. We've given people a language that, if you look at, some change management models and awareness is obviously one of the first important key steps about trying to create change. And so when we talk about below the line versus above the line, we've created massive awareness of what below the line looks like, sounds like, talks like, shows up like within our team, within our organization. And then we've given people a really simple and powerful way just to call it out. In themselves and others. And so we've created this social acceptance, this kind of fun way to be able to do it, to bring each other above the line. And we've created accountability with every single person to demonstrate accountability according to this model. So staying above the line. So when we can create that kind of a shift and that kind of a change, we have dramatically transformed how most teams work, because there are many of the things that I went through in just this short little list that don't exist or not happening well within organizations. And by the time we introduce this and set people in motion on this different path, then we've created an altogether different trajectory for achieving results. And then we fulfilled what I said was an audacious claim at the start. We've really transformed the team's accountability. we've transformed their alignment, and we will definitely transform the results that they're going to be getting in the next 90 days. So I have had the opportunity and the honor and the pleasure of being able to see this happen firsthand many times. How people are excited when they walk out and they approach their job, their teammates, their challenges in entirely different ways. And so that's why I know it's an audacious claim, but I was okay to make it because I can confidently say I've seen it. So that's kind of the end of my presentation for the webinar. I'm going to ask if somebody has some questions to please feel free and shoot them to me in the question box. I'm going to take a look at what questions. I would also point out that there are some handouts here that you can grab and download. There's a door 5 reasons your organization needs a culture of accountability. And there's also this door blame game and steps to accountability. This is just kind of a handout that I would use in a team setting. And I would invite you, I'm going to soon be putting up a little something to invite people to take the blame game challenge. And so what I would be offering would be to go into organizations who maybe think they're doing well and they're being effective, whatever, to take the blame game challenge. I'd be happy to come in and do some exercises of this in a short period of time with their team and just to show how prevalent below the line activity is, and to try and identify some of these opportunities in short order to see how effective are you? Is your team really effective? Are they languishing below the line? Are they doing and dealing in the blame game a lot and letting all kinds of accountability gaps carry on? Or are you continuing? And you know what? If an organization is doing phenomenally well and there's not much I could do for them, I'd be the first one to admit that. But by the same token, if they could see that, oh my gosh, there's some issues here and we could benefit by improving, then I'd be happy to work with them too. So I invite you to do that as well. As far as questions, I'm going to again look at the question board here. I know somebody just asked quickly here about implementation. What does that look like? So the Oz principle, accountability training, everything that I've shown today is part of that workshop. It's quite literally a one-day workshop. So there's possibly, depending on the organization I'm working with, the size of the team, there's quite possibly some upfront consulting work that I might do, again, depending on the team and the results, right, where typically there's at least an interview to start with the top leader of the team. And so bear in mind, I can do this with a team of any size, or I can do it with an entire enterprise. But the top person of that team really needs to be first involved because we're talking to them about what they want to define and get everybody aligned to as the key results. So we need to make sure we've got clarity around that we introduce it in the right way that's memorable and that people will be able to repeat it and keep it and use it. So we do a little bit of upfront work there. Otherwise, the workshop is literally one day. Unlike a lot of other workshops, we can put a lot of people through a workshop in a single day, 60, 100 people. So depending on the size of the team you're really looking to implement, I did this with a team of about 120 in one midstream organization, and we did this over many days, just the way they had to make people available. And so we typically only had about 20 to 25 per workshop, but I could easily double or triple that. So it really depends on availability and whatnot. But we get people using the language, talking this different way very, very quickly. And so often then people wonder, well, how do you make that stick, right? Because one of the challenges with training is that, it dies in the classroom. So again, the tools that we provide in the classroom that we have people working on, we've basically created now a takeaway, which is an actual work project, which is an actual gap that we've identified an actual plan to close. And so the team basically goes forward from that point on to actually go ahead and close that gap. So that's one of the key deliverables right in the workshop. And then from the workshop, they're going to implement that plan. So that's part of it. And then we also have these things called PIL tools. It's a digital tool set that comes with this workshop that people can use to keep ongoing feedback sessions, to engage people remotely and solve it exercises. I've shown people how they can create a solve it exercise, engage people that they've maybe connected with over LinkedIn that are entirely different countries but working on similar problems, and basically use the premise of the power of Wikipedia to engage all kinds of people to be able to help them solve their problems, because people are just willing and able and wanting to do that. So So that's it. I'm going to look and see if I have any other questions. If you do want to talk to me specifically, I'd be love to follow up with you about what this might look like, or answer any direct questions. Happy to do that. I thank you so much for joining in the webinar today. I want to be respectful of your time and close it off in the hour, because that's all I asked for and that's all I commit to take. So thank you everybody very much for joining in today. I will follow up with you each directly, and have yourself an awesome day. Look forward to seeing you in person somewhere very soon. Bye-bye.